All right. Welcome, everyone. Um, as I mentioned, and thanks to Muriel and Jelly for hosting. My name is Rebecca Salazar. I'm a writer and also a program officer at NB. My pronouns are she or they, and I'm a disabled artist myself, so I'm really glad to get to talk to all of you tonight. Um, Today, my first slide here that I'll be showing you is a title of the presentation. It just says Arts and B grant programs with a detailed image of a textured white and gray ceramic piece by Maria Guevara, who's an artist who's received some Arts and B grants before, just to give you kind of a glimpse of the sort of things people have been creating. And yeah, so I'll be speaking to you today from this kind of dark room with books behind me, but hopefully I won't lose light too quickly. So I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. Arts NB as a provincial entity acknowledges that it carries out its work on the traditional unceded territory of the Wolastoqey, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which these nations first signed with the British Crown in 1726. And the treaties did not deal with the surrender of lands or resources, but in fact recognized Indigenous title to the land and established a relationship that was supposed to be ongoing between all these nations. We, the staff and members of the board, pay respect to the elders past and present and descendants of this land. We honor the knowledge keepers and seek their guidance as we strive to develop closer relationships with the Indigenous peoples of the territory known as New Brunswick. So for anyone who doesn't know yet, Arts NB is the New Brunswick Arts Board. We use the short name kind of stylized in our logo, and it's just shorter to say most of the time. So we're a publicly funded arm's length organization that offers funding to artists. What that means is that our funding comes from the government, but we operate independently and we kind of run like a peer jury system so that artists are the ones making decisions about which other artists are receiving money from filtered through the government through us. And we just facilitate that process. So what we do is we promote and facilitate the creation and production of art. We support artists directly. We support few organizations, but only through project-based grants, same with artists. Arts NB itself is 7 bilingual staff members. So if you do want to ask your questions later in French, you are welcome to, and I can answer you in French as well. We're guided by artists who compose our board of directors. So our board of directors is all artists and arts professionals, and the Circle of Elders, which is a circle of Indigenous artists who help us kind of develop our programming. This staff of 7, so that central staff aside from the board and Circle of Elders, includes 3 program officers, of which I am one. And our job is to administer the grants in the peer jury process. So we're the ones that receive and look at all your applications, and we're also the ones who get to answer your questions about it and help you find the right fit for your projects. To get into who can apply for an Arts NB grant, there's kind of a few different categories of people who can apply. The first and kind of broadest category is what we call professional artists. For us, our definition for that is really broad, and we try to make it as open as possible. So any professional, as by our definition, is someone who is trained or self-taught in an artistic discipline. So if you've taught yourself, if you've taken formal education, if you've done mentorship privately, that all counts. You have to have presented your work to the public, and you have to be willing to offer your services or products in exchange for payment. Whether or not you're getting paid a lot is not any of our business. We don't discriminate whether you're working gig work or part-time or full-time as an artist. All of that counts. So as a professional artist, you could apply for most Arts NB grants, and I'll get into what those are shortly. For artists who don't yet qualify as professionals, but are starting to kind of establish their practice, we do have art scholarships as well. So that for any pre-professional artists, you can apply for that to kind of get started on some mentorships or workshops or formal or informal education that you're going to be working through. We also, as I mentioned, do have one grant where organizations can apply. So something like this organization, NBCPD, could apply to the Artist in Residence program to host an artist if they're based in New Brunswick. One last thing on this slide. I'll mention that we did recently open up our citizenship requirements because it's money that we receive from the government that we're giving to artists. There are some requirements about applicants having to be either a Canadian citizen, a member of a First Nation, a permanent resident of Canada, or the new one, if you have started your application to become a permanent resident in Canada, you can start applying for Arts NB grants. So that's a bit of a new thing. On this slide, you can see a list of the disciplines that Arts NB offers on our application forms. These are not exclusive, so we don't discriminate to only projects that fit specifically into these kind of categories of kinds of art. These are basically the ones that we use like administratively to help select juries that will represent the application pool really well. So we have the main ones are architecture, craft, dance, literary arts, media arts, multidisciplinary arts, music, theater, and visual arts. And I've kind of listed and more at the bottom there because anyone who does fall between or outside of these can still apply. And we love getting to help people figure out where would their applications fit best and where would the projects fit best.
Rebecca, do you want us to ask our questions at the end or as you're going through? What's best for you?
I can do either or. Yeah, we can.
All right. Can you go
Yeah.
back to the previous screen? I got a question.
Yes, you did.
All right. So
Go
for
ahead.
architecture, I do work obviously with the coalition because I'm chair, but I also am heavily involved with the Canada-wide group, and I represent New Brunswick on it, where we're really putting the push for universal design housing. And one of the things that we
Mm.
wanted to do was work with different schools of architecture. So, or in this case, I could work with the School of Engineering at UNB and run some type. Can you do it as like a training contest or have engineers produce models? Would that work in a way? Is there a way that,
That one could work. That one might be a trickier question. So I'm going to come back to this at the end because
okay,
some of those questions that don't fit quite into arts, but kind of bridge arts and engineering, for example, like you're talking about, those projects might have a few different potential funding sources.
okay,
And I do have a list of some places where that
okay.
might be
And then the other
better
one
fit.
is
Yeah.
we're working with Monster Publishing,
Hmm.
right? And we sort of like, I mean, we've had some discussions because the gentleman who runs it himself went through school with ADHD back in the 80s when teachers just you were just a bad kid, right? There was no such thing as it. And so he does children's books, right? School age books. So he has offered up to us the opportunity that we could have people either design a book or come up with a concept and then try to hook up with an author there. And we want to get these books done so that we can get them into school age kids' hands to help kill that ableism stigma that happens at youth. So I've got two or three ideas floating through my head, but I would make my kids cry if I tried to help them with their homework and help try to draw a picture. They'd be like, Mom, I need a picture of an elephant. And I would help draw them. They'd be like, that's not an elephant because I'm just that bad, right? Is that something that we could apply to try and get an illustrator to help us or something like that? Is there a grant or they could teach us how to become better illustrators?
I have a few ideas on how that could work.
Okay.
And I'll come to those programs momentarily. One would be to have the artist apply um, for some funding so that they could do this commission piece for you.
Okay.
Another would be to apply through the Artist in Residence program, which I'll talk about in detail momentarily.
Perfect.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways to kind of fit a project like that that has multiple people involved and different kinds of like collaborators involved in it.
Yeah.
So your organization and the target audience of young people, and then the schools being involved, and the publisher and the potential artists and illustrators. There's ways to kind of spread that out so that the most people get paid the most amount of money. So I
Okay.
can help you detangle that at some points
Perfect.
here.
All right. Thank you.
But yes, there's a way. That's the short answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rebecca, can I ask you to elaborate on a couple of the categories with a better definition just
Yeah.
than the list? Because architecture is basic, literary arts is basic, but when it comes to multidisciplinary arts, media arts, and visual arts, because some of them over the years have really gone in together, and the same with
Oh, yeah.
craft. So how are you deciphering them to push people towards that? Like, what does craft cover compared to visual arts?
It really depends on the artist, and for a lot of people, it comes down to which traditions do you wish to align with more. So for someone who's a production potter, they might not apply under visual arts, they might apply under craft because there's a bit more of a tradition of understanding functional ceramics in that area. Whereas if the same person wanted to apply under visual arts, they could, and they would just have to say why in their application. So it's entirely like a self-determined thing. Um, we've had a lot of debate about like maybe adding a secondary discipline section to the applications because that's becoming more and more relevant. We have a lot of people who do just select multidisciplinary because they are working in like film installation with painting, and that's so many different, that's media, and that's also visual, and that's a few other things involved as well. So it's really flexible, and it really just depends on like what is your background as an artist? What kind of artist do you want jurying your work to be looking at it to understand it on its own terms?
So
And if you
craft
ever
is
have
more
questions, we love to advise on this sort of thing.
so craft is more along the definition then of craftsmanship.
Yeah, like fine craft, artisanship, that sort of tradition as well. It is very much of an overlapping set of categories. So there's plenty
Okay.
of wiggle room. Yeah.
And visual arts, I mean, many, many moons ago, it was always referred to as fine arts, right? And covered
Yeah,
like
yeah.
20 or 30 different disciplines from photography to painting to dance, even, right?
Hmm.
But what about something like weaving? What would weaving fall
Weaving,
under? Or fiber arts?
we've had fiber artists apply under visual or under craft, depending on sort of where their training is or where they're like more where they find their community among other artists. So it
Okay,
really does depend on who you are, what you feel fits best.
okay,
And if you're
thanks.
ever confused on that, yeah, we're happy to help you find a fit.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions before I get into the programs? Cool. So let's talk about grants. Here you can see kind of like a sort of like a mind map visually of a bunch of colored rectangles representing the different grant program titles that we have for Arts NB. In the center, that you can see the Arts NB logo in red and gold, matching little rectangles all around it. So this is an overview of all the programs that we have to offer, including a couple of special programs that I'll talk about in more detail. Um, all of these you can find detailed program guidelines in PDF form on our website. And you can find more information as well on the website that I'll show you later. So the projects are the grant programs that I have highlighted here in gold are the ones that are project-based grants for professional artists. As I mentioned, those kind of eligibility categories earlier. In pale yellow, pale gold, we have the art scholarship one showing that it's related, but it's for pre-professional artists. In pink, we have the Lieutenant Governor's Award, which is kind of an outlier. And I'll mention that one in a moment because it's open for nominations right now. And lastly, in red, we have the Accessibility Top-Up Grants, which I will explain very much in detail shortly. I'll get into the LGAs first. So the Lieutenant Governor's Awards is sort of this biannual achievement award that we run, essentially to celebrate artists who have done a lot in their field. Some people call it like a lifetime achievement award, but it doesn't depend on age or on retirement or anything like that because art spans a lifetime a lot of the time. Um, Here on this slide, you can see the poster congratulating the last four laureates from the 2024 awards. So in visual arts, we had Phil Camo in red in that little diagram, and Marshall Button one in performing arts, and Valerie Sherrard for literary arts. Lastly, Kara Francis won the first ever Indigenous Artist Award, which is brand new, and we are keeping that going forever as well. So currently the nominations are open for the 2026 awards for all four of those different awards, with a deadline of July 1st. If you're interested in nominating someone or self-nominating, that is currently open and you can find more information on the website. So this isn't a project-based application, but it's a way to nominate an artist to celebrate their work as a whole. And it's really lovely getting to read the letters that come in nominating people. A lot of the time it's people's mentors or students or people they've worked with collaboratively, and we get to kind of see how people want to celebrate them. It's always exciting. I'll get now into those little gold rectangles. So all the main programs that we have. So this is kind of a cheat sheet that you can see here in like a table format with two columns. On the left column, you can see the names of the programs, the grant programs. And on the right column, you can see sort of like a really condensed sort of cheat sheet version of what they do, what they're for. As I mentioned, they are project-based. So depending on what kind of project you're working on, a different grant might work for your project, or even several grants might work for different activities within your project. And that's always something that we help out with. If you're not sure how to break down your project into chunks that can fit across multiple grants, we would love to help you find how to maximize the amount of funding that you can get to pay yourself and your collaborators. So to give you a quick run through of what these are, the main one of these, our big flagship program, is the Creation Program, which is fairly self-explanatory. It's for artists to fund themselves while they create new original artwork in whatever discipline, in whatever form. It can be exploratory artwork, it can be sort of a first draft of something, it can be a completed work, it can be anything in between. But essentially, the point of this grant is to pay yourself while you're creating and pay any collaborators you're working with as well. Next, we have documentation, which is kind of for discussions about the art that's being created in New Brunswick. So things like curation, like if you're curating a special exhibition of, say, disabled visual artists across New Brunswick, you could apply to fund your work as you're curating that and setting up the exhibition and pay the artists as well for their participation. You can do documentary work in this area, in this grant, art history, art criticism, that sort of thing. So anything that creates conversation about arts in New Brunswick. Arts infrastructure, the next one, is for emerging and newcomer artists. So if you're kind of in your early stages of your career or you're recently arrived to Canada and you qualify as a professional artist, you kind of get access to this special grant as sort of like an early equipment investment. So you can buy an important piece of equipment like a musical instrument, a camera, computer, whatever it might be that would help you start your art practice and get more independent in it. So it's kind of like a Kickstarter in that sense. Next, we have the Equinox program, which is a really expansive program for Indigenous artists that we created with the Circle of Elders. And that one is super open to more community-based work in Indigenous communities or just other works by Indigenous artists that kind of fall between the cracks of other programs. And it's kind of like a testing ground for what are the expansive possibilities of where art is moving and how are Indigenous people at the forefront of that. Always really fun to see the stuff coming out of that program as well. Next, we have artists in residence. So as I mentioned, organizations can apply. So a New Brunswick-based organization can apply to host an artist coming from anywhere to do some work in their facility. So like if they have a ceramic studio, they can invite someone to come create there. They can invite people to also give workshops or public talks or exhibitions or performances, that sort of thing. A lot of things can be part of a residency. The flip side of that is that artists can also apply. So if you're a New Brunswick-based artist, you can apply for an artist in residence grant to do a residency anywhere in the world, whether that's in New Brunswick or elsewhere. We've had people going to Norway, we've had people going to Italy, we've had people going to Argentina, various parts of Canada, also all over the world. And it's really cool to see.
Go hang out with the penguins at the Marshall Islands and see how the
Yes,
tariffs are
you could.
doing.
Yeah.
Could
I think we
we?
actually have had someone do a project with puffins
Oh,
recently enough.
the puffins are cute. Would it be, would something along that line, it could be partially that or infrastructure to show things like Frostival, Fredericton Frostival. Heaven forbid one activity be accessible at that. Like, heaven forbid, to do a study to show how they could make an event like that, bring accessibility to it across the board. Is that like where you're doing one of these, the study part and show how they could easily change
Hmm.
so many of these events to make them accessible?
Oh, there's a few ways that that could work. I can think of two right away. So one of them would be artists in residence.
Mhm.
Say if Frostival wanted to hire an artist in
You're
residence, an
funny.
artist to come and they could use this grant. So they could apply for this grant to fund the artist to do this. And once they get the money, they can pay this artist to um, work and create new things and create accessibility in a creative way throughout the festival. That's something that they could do in your example. The other way to do that would be if you, as say, BCPD wanted to talk to Frostival and say, we want to be part of your festival. Here are the measures of accessibility we want to bring to your performances.
Hmm.
That could fit under documentation potentially
Okay.
because it's a way of expanding and kind of creating conversations around how art happens in New Brunswick. So there's a little bit of an opening there.
Okay.
It's one of those programs that's kind of hard to describe because it can
Hmm.
do a lot of things, but it's like it's more like the meta level. It's not making the art itself, but how do we make the art itself and
Hmm.
how do we promote it and get it out there? So there's some possibilities there as well.
And then if
Um,
we had some artists with disabilities doing a demonstration at one or having a display or to show it is possible.
Yeah,
Hmm.
for doing an exhibit, that's something that would like if you were curating an exhibit, that would be documentation also.
Mhm.
That would fit under there. The artists themselves actually would have access to the career development grant, which is
Yeah.
the next one in this list as well.
There's going to
One
be
of those
multiple, like laid one over the top, right?
exactly, yeah,
Cool.
and it also is opened up by so each person who applies to Arts NB has can apply for and receive one of each grant per year. So that opens things up significantly. So if you as an artist decided, I want to curate an exhibit of artists with disabilities for Frostival, say, and you were able to kind of show an agreement with Frostival that you were going to do this, list the number of artists that you wanted, here are the artists, here's some of their work. That could be your documentation application. And at the same time, those artists could also be applying for a career development grant to travel to Frostival to attend the exhibition. So one of the things that we have under career development, which is kind of a funny little like umbrella program for 3 grants, and you can receive all 3 in a year. One of those is a travel grant for artists who are being invited to present their work, whether that's a performance, an exhibition, whatever it might be. I've seen people use it for poetry readings if they've been asked to go to a different city.
Hmm.
So if you're traveling more than, I think it's 100 kilometers for, or 150 kilometers for any presentation of your work, you have access to the Arts by Invitation program. And that can give you some money to travel and to pay for your accommodations while you're staying somewhere. That's the little ABI acronym that I have in there. I had to abbreviate this one a lot. Um, Career development, just to kind of like flesh that one out more as we go. There's also a version of the art scholarship that is also for professional artists. So we have the art scholarship program that is for artists who are not yet professional, but for artists who do qualify as professional, who still want to do more training, who want to do workshops or formal studies or informal studies, even if you wanted to do like a private mentorship, that's something that you could apply for funding for through the professional development program. And that gives you funding for your tuition, any program costs related to your studies. And lastly, under that particular umbrella of career development, we have the professionalization and promotion grant. These are the wordiest of our programs. I'm apologizing for the word away, but I do have lists of those that I can send you to
Okay.
later. That one's basically to help you develop any promotional resources, like, say, a website. If you wanted to start selling your work online, you could apply for one of these grants, have someone and pay someone to like set up a website for you, set up a web shop, that sort of thing. So lots of possibilities there. We've had people use this to get like new headshots for performance
Hmm.
auditions and that sort of thing, or to get like promotional posters done for a show they were doing. Things like that would fit under
Okay.
here.
The
So I
wheels
mentioned the
are
art scholarship
yeah.
as well.
The
Yeah.
wheels are turning because then I'm thinking like, could we use it to start up a group like the Roulettes, right? So we don't have anything like that in New Brunswick, which is dance in wheelchair, where they do these really cool dances through in the use of wheelchairs and walkers. or the creation of an exercise group, an online exercise group that is made solely for persons with disabilities. So this is the chair movement, but this is for if you're standing, this is how you do it. Explain if you've got visual disabilities.
The possibilities are pretty endless. There's
Yeah,
always, if there's not a way that an arts MB program could cover
you can
what you're
tinker with
thinking
it.
of, we have ideas of who might.
Yeah.
So anytime you come to us with an idea, don't be afraid, even if you think it might fall outside of what our grants offer, because we do have connections with Canada Council for the Arts, with Music New Brunswick, with the Department of Tourism, Heritage and Culture, which does more like organizations and festival grants and things like that.
Mm.
We fund the artists directly, and through the Artist in Residence program, we do have that one option to like have an organization apply to support an artist directly as well. Um, but for bigger like organization like core funding and things like that, we do have contacts at the Department of Tourism, Heritage and Culture that we can connect you with, and other possible resources as well. So never hesitate to ask. I'll move on
Super.
here just to give you kind of a bit more of a glimpse of these programs in detail. So here we have the same table, but with more columns. So on the left, the program titles again. In the middle column, we have some of the application deadlines. So we do these on a rolling basis. You can usually apply, if you just missed a deadline, you can apply for the next one. You can reapply if you didn't get it the first time. These are really flexible. So a lot of these have 1 or 2 deadlines a year. The artist in residence and career development programs have a deadline every second month, so about every 8 weeks or so. An art scholarship happens once a year, but we are currently trying to see if we can maybe add a second deadline for that one to make it more flexible. In the right column as well, you can see some of the grant amounts that are available for these programs. So just to give you an idea of what those are, these are the maximum grant amounts. So you can ask for less, depending on what your needs are, the scale of your project, whatever it might be. But for an example, the creation program has sort of like 2 levels to it. The first of which is for early career artists, so professionals who have 5 years or less of experience as a professional artist, and you can ask for up to $12,000 if you are in that category. And for artists with more experience than 5 years, you can ask for up to $20,000, with the understanding that once you've progressed to that point, your projects are probably getting bigger and bigger and involving more people.
Rebecca,
So
may I ask
yeah,
how many of each grant is like how many copies of each grant is available? So in the creation of 20,000, is it only one per year that's given out, or is there 10 per year? Like how many?
there are many. I'm trying to think of the numbers we had last time. We did get a huge budget boost last year, which was very exciting because we were having a massive shortfall, like more projects that were worthy of funding than we had funding for, which still does happen to a small degree, but we were able to double the amount of grants we were giving out. So currently, I think our last creation deadline, we were able to give out, I think it was like 20 to 30 $20,000 grants in one deadline, and we do that twice
Holy
a year.
crap.
Yeah.
Does that,
So
is some of that
it's
being
a lot.
improved where you guys have now, I know the government has just passed regulations actually recognizing the value of arts.
Yeah, we're following that closely because that gives us some opportunities to ask for
Well,
even more
because I
funding
mean,
than we have.
they used to make me teach when I could still work. I taught art, 3 art classes. And I mean, I am the, if you want to do a project on the shittiest artist in New Brunswick, I could be that person. Like, I can't draw, sing, play an instrument, but I can speak. And that's a different type of art. But
Mhm.
drawings and all that stuff, forget it. Muriel's laughing somewhere, going, yeah, I've seen some of her stuff. It is bad. But there are other things I can do. So,
Mhm. Yeah, there's lots of openings. If you want to, actually, there's a section of our website, and I can show you this later, that we have like previous results from previous deadlines. So you can
mhm.
see how many grants were given out per category of each grant, what they received, and you can see also like a breakdown of like how many artists applied in dance and how many received grants in dance and how much was the total amount received in dance versus the amount that was requested. We do a huge like breakdown of the statistics after every program deadline.
Awesome.
So that's always like available to see. We report it. We want to be transparent about what we're doing and so celebrate how many artists we're able to fund. We see a question from Carly.
Yes, I'm currently working on both writing my memoir style, trying to blend a little bit of my poetry into my
Hmm.
publishing my own memoir. And I'm wondering sort of what are art scholarships that might work good for me.
They might be, yeah. Have you published your work yet? I don't know. And if it's like performing in some like open mics, if you've had a poem in a
I know
magazine.
I've read my poetry for some rallies with Acorn and informally coffee chats and whatnot for the coalition.
Yeah. You should, this
Yeah.
is where you should be doing a book of Carlyisms. She's got the greatest Carlyism. Karen, what type of, um, just like, I'm just trying to help Karen. She can't find where the raise hand but function is. Are you on a phone or a computer?
Laptop.
Laptop. Okay. So if on the bottom where you've got like video participants, chat and all that, if you don't have raised hand, you might have something that says more.
Yeah.
It should to look under more. It's either usually under there or reactions.
Yeah, no, not there. Okay, I see it under reactions. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. To answer Carly's question, depending on what your CV would look like, what kinds of experience you might have, you would either fall under the art scholarships or you might qualify for more than that. So if you have a bit more experience than you're able to bring to mind, but like on the spot right now, that's totally fine. We run kind of like a bi-weekly session where we talk to artists. It's just like a drop-in Zoom session, and you can come by that anytime, or you can email us anytime, tell us like, here's what I've got, here's my experience, would I qualify in this area or that area? Like we can help you find that all out. And there's kind of like a few checklists. We have a checklist for like the professional artist criteria, so our like specific definition. And if you wanted to go through that and see like if you qualify, you can do that on your own and then ask us if you wanted to check. Um, yeah, talk to us about that for sure, because I think at the very least you'd be eligible for an art scholarship to start kind of like getting a bit more training to help you towards that goal. Any other questions before I move on here? Okay. All right. So yeah, as I mentioned, there are detailed program descriptions and details of everything you can do with each of these grants on the website. And I'll show you how to navigate that at the end. Here we have sort of a really maybe not the best put together clip art sort of diagram. This is where I have to admit that my visual skills are not great either. But here we have sort of this diagram representing the life cycle of an application. So there are the three sort of clip art figures laid out across. At the left, we have this person with a paintbrush, the artist. In the middle, we have two people sitting at a desk, which is representing the Arts NB staff. And at the end on the right, we have the jury. So these three little figures with the speech bubble representing a jury of peers, so other artists. Um, there are arrows kind of going over the top from left to center to right, and then on the bottom from right to center to left. And I'll talk about what that means. Basically, what this is showing is how an application for a grant progresses from the artist and then to the jury and then back to you with your result. So the first thing that happens when you decide you want to do a grant application is that you would read guidelines, consult with the program officers, come to speed consulting, come to one of these presentations, figure out where your project would fit. Once you look at the guidelines, start preparing your documents, you would submit your application online. You can do that also with help. Like that is something we encourage. Like get your friends to read over your project description, get your friends to have a look at it, get your mentors or your community to help you like figure out how to like lay your thoughts out. That's always something that's super helpful. We always say explain it to a friend who's not an artist but interested in art, then that's what the jury wants to hear in that tone. You don't have to be fancy, you don't have to be academic. You can just lay it out as clearly as you can, what you want to do, why you want to do it, and how. After the application deadline, that's when we move into that center where Arts and B program officers would receive and process all the applications. When we're processing, that means that we're looking through every application, we're checking eligibility, making sure everyone's in the right place, and we're making sure that everything is complete. At this point, we would also contact you if, say, any broken files were in your application or any links had expired. We would contact you to get those updated and make sure the application is in its good shape so that the jury can see everything properly. At that point, we would also start assembling a peer jury. So this is where I mentioned that we'd look at the disciplines that people selected. So we'd look at, okay, we have like 17 visual artists and this many literary artists and that many people in craft and this many people selected dance and etc. And then we'd look at what kinds of dance, what kind of visual art, what kind of craft, what kind of literary artists are we looking at? We'd do kind of like a really like sketched out breakdown of what those are. We also look at languages. So how many Francophone versus Anglophone applications did we receive? Because we do operate entirely bilingually. And we start to draw from our gigantic list of potential jurors and start contacting artists who might fit that particular application pool. So we try to make sure that we have like a balanced jury reflecting the disciplines and like the kinds of art that the applicants are putting forward, but also balanced languages and equity seeking groups and any other like regional considerations, things like that, to reflect. Basically, what we want is to have a jury that knows how to respond to the art featured on its own terms as much as possible. This can be really tricky, and we also have to do like a big conflicts of interest list to make sure that no one's having their like their sister or their partner or their like oftentimes collaborator or the person who wrote them a letter of recommendation on the jury for that application. So we have a pretty careful, complicated process on that. But then we would start sending the jurors all of the applications. I see a question from Karen.
Yeah, in the chat room there, they're just talking about payments. Like you in the bottom corner, you've got an asterisk there saying for artists on fixed income,
Yes.
disability CPP, Arts and B can arrange grant payments in installments to help so you don't lose benefits. Are you guys doing any advocacy work towards the government to make sure that that never happens, that we never get clawbacks?
Yeah, it's something that because taxation is federal is a little bit outside of our purview as an like a provincial arm's length, but we're in contact with some people at other arts funders on the federal and provincial levels in a few places. So Canada Council is working on this as well. And there are people in province that are trying to lobby the federal government to reclassify grants as non-taxable income. There's a few different categories where grants would make much more sense because they are often being like they're being paid to the artist, but it's not like you're pocketing all of that. It's a lot of things that are already allocated to pay other people, to pay for materials, etc.
Yeah.
So we're trying to help
Good.
Yeah.
kind of like lend our resources and our research to that effort.
Provincially, for sure, it's safe.
Yeah,
As long as you keep it to under the 500 a month for now, which they're talking about increasing. Where you have
yeah,
to
it
be
is
careful with
low. Yeah,
CPPD is you have to remember that you cannot work more than your 15 hours or volunteer or do that stuff. So you have to talk about doing it in small amounts because if they feel that you're doing too much, they can force you, they can cut you off, make you go back to work.
yeah, and that's what we
Um,
try to avoid. We've
uh,
definitely had conversations with artists before who
yep,
received like a large grant and couldn't receive all of it at once. We
yep.
try our best to find ways that work for them.
I can
That's good
say
to
So
from
hear.
spreading out the
talking to
payments is
artists,
one way to do that. Yeah.
they are excellent at this. This group is
Hmm.
really good at working with people to ensure that following this is not going to, as long as you do it the way that, you know, that SD or CBP tells you, along with working with Arts MB, they are excellent and they will help you just follow the rules and follow the regulations and make some comments about how Oof, I did 12 hours this month instead of 15, and it just exhausted my body. And make that a public statement. But don't show yourself if you're supposed to have mobility disabilities climbing a ladder and installing installments from the ceiling and hanging there like you're paragliding, because that might not make you look the best or make them look the best or anybody look the best, because we're not here to cheat. I don't think anybody's cheating or lying or pretending they have a disability when they don't. Because if they are, they need to shake their head, because this is not a happy or fun or
Yeah.
easy
It
life.
also takes more effort to fake a disability than
I know.
most people assume. Like, it's not a
Anyone
thing
can
you
have
want to
my
do. No.
MCS or cancer if they want it. It's up and available for free. Come get her.
Yeah.
No, it's nice to hear that you guys are advocating towards the federal level, even if you can't change
Hmm.
it yourself. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that Canada Council is also advocating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're-
there's some research groups happening federally,
mm,
and there's a association called the Canadian Public Arts Funders that has a lot of research initiatives going on. It's basically like a group for any public arts funder in Canada, including Canada Council federal stuff, as well as provincial and some city funders as well for larger cities.
yeah.
And a lot of us are doing kind of research in that area and some advocacy locally as well as on the federal level. So there's some
Mm.
initiatives underway. Nothing solid to report right now, except that this is one of the stopgap measures that we have. We will work with you to find out how to spread out a grant payment as
Yeah.
much as we can to make sure you don't lose your benefits.
The
Yeah.
first thing we got to get the feds to do is change the name in French so that it's no longer pour les personnes what is it, invalidité. No, we're not
Yeah.
invalid people. Les prestations d'invalidité. We got to get that one changed first. Like, come on, people, keep your head of shape. But use that as
Federal
the entrance way
moves slow.
to
Yeah.
make change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. I'm gonna jump back into the little cycle of an application from that. We jumped ahead to the end, but we can always come back as many times as we need. So yeah.
There is a question in the
Oh,
chat.
sorry, I
Where
can't see
Aaron
the
was
chat
asking,
right
no, it's
now.
all right. That's okay. Aaron was asking, can you use the grants towards hiring an assistant to help you with the project? If you would need a disability assistant, right? Like whether it's like a home care or something that's, as long as they have the same talent and can help with the project, would that work?
Yes, there are a few options for this, and I'm about to get to that in my next couple slides. I'll finish this one up and I'll get to that question, because there's a few different ways that we do that. But yes, assistants are something that you can request in your grants. There are also top-ups available, so you don't have to spend your grant on accommodations that you need for access. So, quickly jumping back into this life cycle. So we receive the applications, we check that everything's working, we assemble a jury, send the applications to the jury. They look at all of that. We kind of give them like a package of all the applications and some descriptions of what's going on. And like, here are the guidelines and how here are the values by which we want you to evaluate applications. And those things are feasibility. So did the applicant show how this is going to be done and clearly that they have the skills to do what they've stated? Impact, so has the applicant like demonstrated the value of this work to them, the impact on their career, the impact on their community, that sort of thing. And just like some application quality stuff, like is it complete? Did they show samples of work that support the project, that sort of thing, little smaller considerations, but that's like a very small fraction of the grade that you get. Basically, the jury will then kind of assign like a score. We have like an internal scoring system, just that they bring to the meeting. When they meet, they will go through every application individually and discuss everything. And slowly over usually like between 2 to 5 hours, depending on how many applications are in that batch. They will put together sort of like a final division of who they want to receive funding and who they want to kind of encourage for next time. So there are 3 possible statuses you can get on an application. So the results are either recommended, which means the jury was excited about your work and is giving you a grant. We have sort of like a middle status called merit, which means the jury wanted to fund your project and was excited about your work, we ran out of budget, which does happen occasionally, less so now that we've had a budget increase. And lastly, not recommended, which just means that the jury didn't quite prefer your application this time around, but that doesn't mean that it's a judgment on your art. These statuses are never a value judgment on you as an artist. They're rather assessments of the proposal that the jury has in front of them. So sometimes it's just a matter of they didn't have enough information or they didn't quite see the vision in the way that you explained it, and there might just be a little piece missing or something like that. So it's always worth trying again, regardless of what status you get. We encourage people to keep applying, no matter what. And we do have a few things that can help you kind of improve for next time. As we kind of get those results from the jury, what we do then, it comes back to Arts NB staff, is we prepare results letters, press releases, statistics, that breakdown of like how many people applied versus received grants per discipline in total, what were the number of like the dollar amounts requested versus the dollar amounts granted, that sort of thing. And a summary of jury feedback, which is super helpful if you wanted to look at what did the jury recommend? What were the things that they wanted to see more of in applications? Like, did they need more information in your budgets? Did they want the applicants in this batch to explain something more clearly in general? That's a helpful resource that's always on our website, and we kind of put that together for you. And lastly, what happened then is that we would send you your results by email. So you always receive that in your email after the application has gone through this long cycle. For some of the programs that have like shorter deadlines, like the artist in residence and career development, you get your results back within 6 to 8 weeks of the deadline. For the other programs that run a lot longer and have like higher numbers of applications, that can be up to 3 months. But 3 months is our absolute cutoff, unless like something disastrous happened to our system. It would never go over that amount of time before you get results. And then we pay you out. We can, as we mentioned, to split that payment into installments to make sure that your disability benefits, fixed income benefits, or even that your like taxable income for the year doesn't exceed anything that you don't want it to exceed. We can work with you to set that up as well. Everything's by direct deposit at that point as well. So I'm going to move into the access programs, which someone already asked about without knowing they were asking about it in the chat. So at the bottom of that sort of like mind map of all the Arts NB programs, we have the accessibility and equity programs at the bottom. These ones are fairly new and they're really exciting to have. They're basically top-ups on your other grants. So these ones do not go through a jury process, and there are 2 of them. Basically, if you have access needs before an application even begins, so you know that when you're going to be preparing an application, you want to have some assistance with the process of that, with assembling your documents, your samples of work, your proposal, that sort of thing. If you need help going through the guidelines and figuring out the online system, you can hire someone to provide application assistance, and that's what this program is called. Basically, this is a small fund that you can request with just like a single page form. Just tell us what kind of service you need, and we would pay the person who is helping you directly, so that doesn't count towards your taxes or income. It goes to them directly, and you get to have their help with the application. Usually we recommend that people submit a request form 4 to 8 weeks before the application deadline. We've done shorter if necessary before. And it's paid upon request entirely by self-declaration to it's anyone who faces a disability-related barrier. And also, we've opened it up as well to Indigenous artists who have language and cultural barriers. So long as you just tell us what you need, we trust that you need that, and we give you this money, or we give the person you're hiring this money. You can get up to $300 per request for an application, and you can get up to a total of 500 per year. For example, if you wanted to apply for 5 different grants and you knew that you wanted to have help with all of those 5, you could divide that up and make 5 different requests for each of those throughout the year for $100 each, and you would be fine. You would get all of those. Yeah, Usually, I don't think we've ever denied any of these. Like the point is to let you just tell us what you need, and we have the support available, ready to go. We don't require doctor's notes, diagnoses, anything like that. It's just a matter of support is here, ask for it. Next, in that sort of access program umbrella, we have the access support program. So this one happens when you receive a grant. So anytime you receive any kind of grant, oh yes, I see a question in the chat about a grant writer. Yes, you can hire a grant writer with the application assistance. The person that you hire to help with the application can be a professional grant writer. It can be a peer, friend, someone you know who will help you with this. It can be like a support worker, anybody who would be willing to help you with the process. So it's really open. I'll move into the access support one next. So this one is a top up for any grant that you receive. If you have access needs for your project, you don't need to dip into the project funds to be able to pay your access needs. That was the whole idea behind creating this particular grant. So essentially, what this is that you can receive up to an additional $1,000 for those access needs. And again, we do have the structure in place if you needed to hire an assistant, but you didn't want extra $1,000 coming in as your income, we could arrange to pay the assistant, whatever's needed here. This is also done by confidential request form. So you have to 3 months after you are told that you receive a grant to say, hey, I would like this assistance. Here's what I need. Here's how much I would like for that. Let us know any other information that might be helpful, like if you wanted it paid to someone other than yourself directly. And we would grant you that top up on top of your grant. One of the reasons that we started these two access programs was because a lot of people were feeling like they had to request these things as part of their grant budget in their project. So if they were applying for creation grant, they felt like they had to put their assistants, like their support assistant in there as well, which reduces the amount they're able to pay themselves for the work or the amount they're able to put into materials or studio rental or to pay their collaborators, their other artists they're working with. And that was unfair for a number of reasons because it just makes it more expensive to be a disabled artist. But it also meant that people had to disclose disabilities to a jury. And there was always concern about like, is that going to affect your application negatively? Are some juries going to be biased against that? Um, and to take out that worry entirely, we just decided to have this confidential program. You can still request things like that in your grant budget. It's up to you. You have the option to disclose if it's relevant to your project or if you feel like that's something important in your practice. But you also have the option not to disclose anything, and you can get the support you need confidentially through these access programs. The way that we run them currently is it's a PDF form, 1 page each, I believe, to make the request. Just like give us a few sentences of what you need, tell us the amount, send it by email, and we'll get in touch to arrange the payment. That's how these work to make it as easy as possible. We're also looking at how to make that even easier right now. So hopefully it'll be like not a PDF form that you have to download, then fill out, then email, but something that you just fill out on the website soon. The website is a strange beast that we are working to try to fix some of the missing pieces of, but that'll be incoming hopefully soon. Any questions about those? All right. So last thing I'll show you here are a few resources on our Arts NB's website. So here we have a screenshot of the website, artsnb.ca, with the grants menu open. So there's a few menu items at the top of the page. The grants menu is the main one that you'll be looking at as an artist. And here we have the cursor kind of indicating the application toolkit option. So the application toolkit is basically a compiled and more detailed version of the cheat sheet of our programs that I showed you earlier. So it has that cheat sheet of like which program does what kind of projects does that fund in pretty short little snippets. It also has information on what an application looks like. So, what do you need to prepare before you start applying? It'll give you kind of guidelines on like, oh, this is what you include in a project description. This is how you prepare a budget. What is an artist CV and how do you make one? And how do you select samples of work, which are the main kind of components of an application for us. It also has like a few PDF examples of project descriptions. So if you needed a guideline to see, like, I want to see what like people have written before, we can't share actual project descriptions, but we have written some like example ones based on what we've seen to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. If ever anything on there is like a little bit outdated, I think some of the PDFs are a little older. The advice is still good. Some of it might look a little bit different in the application forms. You can always ask us for more. We often have like extra little sessions where we can make a fake application just to show you what it looks like. Um, and yeah, Karen.
When you brought up the screen, I find it very hard to read with the yellow lettering. So
Mhm.
that brought a question to me. Do you have any features on your website that help people with vision challenges, dyslexia, or readers? Like
That
say
is a
if
great
someone's
question.
completely blind or very low vision. Do you have anything
Yeah.
on your website that allows the website to read everything to them?
Yes, it is screen reader compatible. And most of the PDFs on our website also are. We're working to make sure that they all are. So some of the older ones might still be a little bit tricky. But we can always provide like a Word version of that to anyone who wants a particular document. Um, it is possible also, it's easy to zoom in and out on our website with your browser. You can do that. This version here is very zoomed out because I wanted to show as much of the page as possible. So it's
I know it's
definitely
just
not the most reader compatible at
the
all.
yellow lettering just like completely can't pick out the letters.
Yeah. The lettering will show up on
Black's
in
fine.
black, black on white. It shows yellow when you're highlighting it just to indicate what you've selected. But you can always like move your cursor and it will go back to black so you can read it again.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It's a great question too. And if you do see anything or find anything on our website isn't compatible or isn't accessible to you, let us know. We're always looking for ways to improve. The website is under our control. Like we design it, we run it, and we can edit things or change things as needed.
Do you
So
know
let
about
us
the
know. It's
AA
helpful.
checks?
Sorry, what was
Do
that?
you know about AA checks? If you just go to
I don't think I
AA
do.
checks, I'll send you the email. If you just go into
Yeah.
AA checks, put in your site, it will tell you anything. Like even if there's a picture that you forget to alt
Whoa,
text, and it's free. I'll
that's fantastic. Yeah.
we'll send you. I'll send you that. I have to make a note, or I will not
Yes,
remember.
please.
Okay, I'll send you that. It's been very, very, very helpful.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you so much for that.
No
I
worries.
look forward to it. All right. Couple more little resources to show you here. Again, they're all pretty zoomed out, but I can tell you what's on here for now. Another page that's pretty useful, also under the grants menu, is the feedback from the peer jury page. I mentioned earlier that applicants to every deadline will receive like a summary of this in like they'll receive the link to this page when you get your results letter, and you can go back and look at like what did the jury that looked at your application have to say, what recommendations did they have for that batch of applications. But you can also go and look at this before you ever start applying or for deadlines you didn't apply to if you're curious. We have all of these listed publicly on the website. There'll be like a document for each deadline, and you can see some of the like basic statistics for that thing, like how many applications were there, how many were received, how many grants were received, and what did the jury have to say. So if, for example, you wanted to apply for a creation grant and you wanted to see what the jury had for do's and don'ts from the last deadline, you can go and look at that, see what advice they had, see what they wanted to see more of. You can read what their thoughts were, and it's all anonymous summaries. But we kind of like summarize them to make them as helpful as possible for people who are interested in applying. Another page that is helpful is the FAQ, frequently asked questions. This is a living document. This is the page that is probably newest on our website, and it is still a little messy. There are things that we are updating as we go. If you have questions that you keep that needing to ask us, we will add them to this page gladly. We keep adding to this almost every month, or updating answers or condensing questions that kind of weren't clearly explained here. Um, any question that comes up fairly often, we try to add to this page. So there's a lot of stuff on here like, what do I do if I don't know which category I'm in for creation? Or what do I do if I don't know if I'm eligible for this grant? Or how do I find information on this thing? Or how do I find help with the website if it's crashing on me? Things like that will all be here. Questions about the programs, about who fits where, about what kinds of art we fund, which is basically anything that applies. We love to see the new things, the exciting things that don't fit in our previous categories. But yeah, this is kind of always adapting to artist needs and our changing programs. We are also in the midst of a huge revision of a lot of our core like grant programs, because they hadn't been updated in a long time. So we're making sure that they are actually serving the needs that they are designed for, and making things a little easier to apply for everyone. And yeah, so you can find more information there. There's also plenty more on the website, which I'll let you explore. There's plenty of resources, where we've linked to studies or the status of the artist report, which I believe Billy mentioned earlier. Someone mentioned it earlier. Apologies if I'm getting that wrong. But yeah, contact information is on the website as well. And I'll give you my contact information as well at the end of this presentation. Yeah, lots more information there. I did mention previously that we run a speed consulting session. So it's a virtual casual drop-in on Zoom. You can drop in anytime between 2 and 4 p.m. on every second and fourth Thursday of every month. We try to run these as consistently as possible. There may be a couple that are being canceled in the next little while because we have staff running too many juries and we ran out of staff who could come to this as well. But yeah, we try to keep these consistent to twice a month. And you can drop in anytime between those hours. You don't need to make an appointment. You don't need to register. You can just find the Zoom link on our website. And I can send you this as well, to Muriel and have that shared with the group.
Yeah,
Yeah, drop
perfect.
in
Yeah, that'd be
anytime.
great.
Mhm.
Is there a
It's a
calendar?
Q&A.
Shelley, sorry.
Yeah.
Is there voyons donc, what was I gonna say? Is there a calendar on your site so that we would know if there's a week gets canceled?
There's no calendar specifically,
Okay.
but it will have the next dates of the next sessions on
Yeah.
the speed consulting page with the Zoom link. It's always the same Zoom link as
Cool.
well. So you could just like save that in your calendar if you
Yeah.
wanted, and then just check back for the dates.
Miria's
Yeah,
sitting there
drop in
going,
anytime.
oh, great. She's giving me something else to
Drop
put in the
in.
calendar. I hate that bitch.
We drop in ourselves.
Yeah, please do. It's really fun a lot of the time. Like sometimes if it's quiet, we'll just kind of hang out and work until someone drops in. Um, Sometimes we'll have so many artists in that we have to like
Mhm.
get people to line up and take turns. Other times it just turns into like a casual chat. We've had artists who kind of like heard each other's questions and like stuck around to like see like what other people were asking, just to kind of get a sense of like, oh, that's a question I never thought I'd need to ask, and now I know the answer.
Eh,
But we've also had people kind of start chatting about like, oh, you're a textile artist too. What kind of stuff do you do? Where are you based? What if we should meet up and maybe collaborate on something? And like sort of thing does happen every once in a while. So it's fun to,
And did you say podcasting would be something that would qualify?
oh, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, if
Miria's
you're an
going,
artist who
Shelley,
wants to
you're
make a
not doing a
podcast, we
podcast. But that's something I've always wanted us to be able to do.
Mhm.
I'd have to, obviously, it's not going to be me, it'd be other people from the coalition, but it's something that I've always been so interested in starting up. Okay,
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah, if it's a podcast specifically featuring artists, you can definitely apply for, I think that would fit under documentation quite well.
Okay.
And I think we've had similar stuff funded through there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, for us, it
All
would be
right.
featuring artists with a disability and how,
Mhm.
disability does not define who you are. It's just a piece of who you are.
Mhm.
And just so you
Yeah.
know, there's a comment in the chat or
Yes.
question is how can we be part of the peer jury?
That is actually my next slide. People
Oh my
are
gosh, we
having a
really are
psychic
just
sense
like
about this.
ESP over here. Woo!
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool.
So on this next slide, we have a QR code which links to the jury sign up form on our website. You can also find it just by going to artsnb.ca. I think it's like listed from the homepage. Yeah, sign up to be an ArtsNB peer jury member. If you qualify as a professional artist, you can register for our pool of potential jurors. So if you've been kind of showing your art to the public, you've been working for a little while, you can apply. There's no guarantee on when you might get contacted because you will be added to our list, but the like needs for each deadline do vary significantly, as I mentioned earlier. So we are always looking for new jurors to join the process. More people join, the better it goes for everyone involved. You can serve on a jury once every 2 years, so we make sure we don't repeat people too much and have like always the same person on a jury. But it's super fun to do. I'm biased in this, but it is a paid gig. You get paid to look at applications. You get to see what other artists are working on, and you get to have kind of a glimpse of the process from behind the scenes. Um, with our support, of course. We're always there to back you up. And yeah, so it's paid work that you get to do and kind of like shape how Arts NB is working. We get a lot of really great feedback from our jurors as well. A lot of the program changes that we're making right now, like to the creation program, were things that jurors suggested after looking at applications and looking at our program, and then the end of the jury meeting saying, like, this would be easier if you did this. And we received those comments and like started thinking like, actually, we should just do that. And we did. So you can be a part of shaping that from behind the scenes as well as from your stance as an artist. The QR code is also in the slides that I sent, so that link is available to you. And if I'm sending a link with a list of links, I will also include this as well. Lastly, final slide. This is just a thank you for listening to me for this long. Here's the Arts NB logo again, but also some contact information. So you can always find our contact info on artsnb.ca. But if you want to reach me or the other program officers directly, you can email us at prog@artsnb.ca. So PROG for programs at artsnb.ca. It's a shared inbox for the whole programs team. So it's me, Dom Leger, and Tilly Jackson, the three program officers, and whichever one of us is most available will answer your question right away. I'll keep an eye out for the names that I'm seeing in this chat right now. And yeah, so with that, we'll
I
open
can
to more
send you the
questions.
list of names if you want.
Sorry?
I can send you the list of names if you want. If you want.
Yes, you can. Thank you.
So much for 20 minutes, eh? We can ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
It was very interesting, Rebecca.
Yes.
I'm sure it has opened up some ideas for a lot of people who were here tonight, and it also confirmed what I was saying. Even if you don't know that you're an artist, even if you're not an artist yet, please come to the presentation because I
Mm,
think there's a little bit of something for a lot of people who didn't even think that this would apply to them, and
yeah.
it applies to a lot more people than we think. It's art, yes, but it's art is is very wide.
That's honestly one of the biggest parts of this job. And it's something that's both frustrating and also like, I'm glad I get to do this part,
Mm.
is convincing artists that they are in fact artists. It's surprising, but also not surprising. Like I know why this happens for especially like artists with disabilities or artists from other marginalized communities. Convincing them that
I
their
get it.
art is
I'm one of
worthy
the
and
people.
also art is like a huge part of this. So I'm glad to be that person for everyone who needs
You
it.
like those
Carly,
people.
go ahead.
Carly has a question, yeah.
I was wondering if you have any sort of thing, or if one of you could help with dealing with that lovely, worse than constipation, the sort of thing known as imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah, yeah. a lot of our
Yeah.
time is spent dealing with imposter syndrome ourselves, but also with the imposter syndromes that every artist has to deal with.
Yes, there is
I
some
wish no
tips
one
and
had
tricks to
to.
deal with that.
Yeah.
Because it definitely can be worse than being super constipated for the rest of the way.
Nope,
Yeah,
that's very true.
Carly needs Carlyism book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things I can tell you is like keep trying. And if you think you're faking it, then like enjoy the fact that you're faking it and getting ahead anyway. Like being an imposter can be like you're doing a spy thing. You're doing something cool. Like you can convince yourself that way if you need to, or you can make more community. Like one of the biggest things that I tell artists is like talk to other artists, come to our speed consulting sessions, come to sessions like these coffee chats, come to sessions or events held by Arts Link New Brunswick, for example. They're kind of like an artists association for New Brunswick. And they do a lot of like networking and mentorship events and things like that. Get in touch with other people. Um, the more you meet other artists in your field and in other fields, the more you'll realize everyone is dealing with that same imposter syndrome. And
Okay.
it's it's holding a lot of people back, but the best way to get around it is to see how other people kind of like help each other through it. So keep trying. Yeah, find your mental tricks for when you're on your own and need to deal with it, but also find community.
I think hanging around with more art people gives you an idea, Carly, as well, not just you specifically,
Hmm.
but any artist. It shows you what other people consider art to be,
Mm.
what other people project for themselves. So it makes a big difference. I wrote a book, a pamphlet back in the late 90s called The Etiquette of Reaching Artist Status, because I had set up some artist run galleries with some young artists like myself, fresh out of college. And in order to get in the newspaper, to get recognized, to get into a gallery, we had to have some way of being considered an artist by the art community. And it was really hard. It was very, very strict. And, it was considered fine arts disciplines back then. So there was painters and sculptors and weavers and, draw, all kinds of things, categories. And none of us had any status. So how were we ever going to get into a gallery? Someone had to give us a chance. So when we hung out with other people that we were like almost like he classified as a mentor, and the mentors were like, wow, they just slapped some paint on a canvas and away they went with the canvas wet trying to sell that piece. And someone liked it and someone famous or someone they knew that was attached to this important thing within the city or community bumped it up, say, hey, look at I know this young artist. So it was really a good way of connecting with people.
You
And I
mean
think
like
connecting with
taping a
people.
banana on an art board and getting 6 million bucks? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then I decided, hey, I'm going to write a little book. So I wrote a little book called How to Reach Artist Status. And it was really, I mean, it's well received. I sold 100 copies. Well, I'm sure most of them were all my friends and other art friends, but still, And back in the
Hmm.
90s, that was a lot of copies for something that you charge $10 for.
Hmm.
Right?
That's
So,
amazing. Yeah.
but that was the thing. It was about going out and talking to people in the community. It was like getting your name out there everywhere, showing anybody that would listen what you were doing. And it worked.
Yeah. One of the best, that's amazing advice. And I also wish I could see this zine if you still have any versions of it. Um, that's amazing, especially with like all the status of the artist conversation happening in New Brunswick right now, which might actually create more pathways to have that recognition in a more official sense than we've had previously.
Yeah.
Um,
Artists
yeah,
will have like more status than people with disabilities in New Brunswick. Woohoo.
yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully it's like an additional status that you can claim
Hmm.
in addition to like ideally like
Yeah.
equity all
Well,
around
I
Maybe
for
just
I'll
hope
apply
that
professions
for.
and
that we
identities. Yeah.
see it going back into the schools better. Like I should not have been teaching art in grade 6 and grade 7. I used Mrs. Brown's art website and did everything that way. It was the only thing I could do. Like music. I should not have taught music when I taught grade 2. Those poor kids. And there's just we need specialists teaching this stuff, and we need to realize that it's more than just drawing and
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
singing the same old songs that makes art.
Mm.
You know, and then we finally had a few of that group, the Chinese group that was in, and they were doing some work, and Higgs threw them all out because, you know, we were trying to turn people into communists or something. I don't know.
Do we have any more questions for more people from
Well, if
people?
we were doing a podcast, would that include things like if you were to get money together, get the grant for a podcast, could you look for equipment and training to then help you establish and run the podcast?
Something like that. Um, I would split that over a few different grants. So say
Okay.
you as the artist, as the storyteller, want to start this podcast.
Mhm.
You want to start doing more audio storytelling in general. So what I might recommend for that would be, oh, you want to learn a bit more about audio, start a professional development grant to get some more training in that, or like do an audio engineering mentorship with an artist who knows about that. And then do an arts infrastructure grant for, say, a microphone and whatever equipment you might need. And then do a documentation grant to kind of do the first season of the podcast,
Okay.
from which you could pay yourself to do the work of like the editing. You could pay the artists who are going to be on it, um, that sort of thing. So that's one example of like how you could break the project over multiple grants to kind of cover more ground. Yeah.
Morbid question. I get a grant and then the cancer gets me. I have to ask these questions
Yeah.
on everything I do. Does that then leave somebody on the hook to repay the grant if I can't complete the work?
No.
Okay.
There's only a few situations where we would actually ask for any grant paid out back to
Mm-hmm.
us, for like a reimbursement. And that's really just like if you, the artist, finished your project, you're still going, moving on to the next project, and you submitted a final report for that grant, but you just said, by the way, this amount of travel money that I had put in my budget, that travel didn't happen. If it's like over $100 or more, we'll ask for that money back,
Okay.
or some amount of it back. But yeah, if
Mhm.
it was something like that, it's money that was yours.
Okay.
So we wouldn't worry about it. Yeah.
All right.
We definitely wouldn't be like putting your family on the hook or anything like that.
Yeah. Whatever. I wouldn't be here, right? So
So does anybody else have any questions? There's quite a few people we haven't heard from.
this is your chance. Ask. You've heard my questions. There's no such thing like your question's gonna be more intelligent than mine because mine have been all over the place.
I'm gonna make sure everybody
Um,
gets the forms and the links
I
and
see Jessica just unmuted herself, so I think she might have a question.
ah,
I wanted to ask Rebecca, you mentioned that Arts and B is looking at changing some of the dates for deadlines was it for the infrastructure grant?
For art scholarship, I
For
think
our
is one
scholarship.
of the ones
Okay.
that's like at the forefront. We are talking about maybe changing some deadlines, but we would announce this before we did anything. The most likely thing is that we would add a deadline or two, rather than take them away. There are a couple that
Cool.
fall like in periods of high activity that we might like try to space out a little bit more, but the idea would be to make it more accessible, not less.
That's exciting. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Yeah. And also like the other thing is if you wanted to apply super early for a program, like you say if you missed the August 1st deadline for an arts infrastructure and it's September and you're like, I should have applied for that. I don't know if I'll remember to do it next year. You can just apply. And then that
Yeah,
application is sitting there. We'll get to it once we hit the next deadline. It'll be a while, but you'll have your hat in the ring. So people
uh,
do that, mostly for the ones that have like shorter deadlines. Like say if you had travel in June and the next deadline is July for like the travel grant for Arts by Invitation, you could submit your application well before you leave, and that's sitting there like it'll get evaluated on the regular timeline and you'll find out the results after your travel, but you might get that money. Yeah.
that sounds really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we try to make things as flexible as possible. There used to be a guideline with a lot of grant agencies where it was your project couldn't start before the deadline that you were applying for, which is super restrictive, especially if there's not many deadlines in a year. So we just made it so that if your project starts on, say, June 2nd and you applied June 1st, you're good. Like a day before you start the activities, we'll look at it when we get to it.
Okay. Good. There's a lot of flexibility there for sure.
Yeah.
That's nice to hear.
Any other questions?
If nobody has any further questions, we're
But
gonna.
we will, so I believe we've got a copy of the PowerPoint, correct?
Yes, you have
So
it in
we'll put
English and
that up
French.
in the website, not the Facebook page, but the website. So NBCPD.org, right, Muriel? That's where you would put it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then same thing on our calendar. So again, if you go to the website, there's a bunch of menu across the top, and there's one that says events and activities, I think.
Events calendar.
Events calendars, right? That's right. We were laughing today because someone said I couldn't find the calendar. I'm like, it says events calendar. So we'll add in one or two of the drop-in sessions, and we'll have a poster there so that it's there to remind us to take advantage. They're there. Go ask. Don't ask me the questions or Muriel because we don't work for them. So the most we can do is guess.
Mm,
But Rebecca and her team, they're the experts. They can help you and they want to help you. So take advantage.
Hmm.
Take
That's the other thing
advantage.
I'll end with. Thank you, Shelley, for that. Um, if you start applying to Arts NB, if you start applying to Canada Council for the Arts, for bigger arts grants, they have huge ones that are organizations or much larger projects, that sort of thing. You
mm,
can apply for both at once. That's one tip. You can apply for multiple funding sources at once and get all of them at the same time, which is a way that a lot of like bigger projects have to fund things, like film projects especially are huge and involve so many people.
mm,
But every one of those funding agencies, they look scary on the surface sometimes because it's a lot of text and a lot of information we have to throw at you,
mm.
but there's always people behind that. Find the email address, find the phone number for whoever you want to reach. For us, it's easiest by email or come to one of the speed consulting sessions. We exist to help you. So we will find a way to find you the information you need. If we don't have it, we will know someone who will. So we'll connect you with anything again.
That's it. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes,
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
And I would
Leah's
like.
gonna say to me tomorrow, see, I told you so. I told you there was art stuff for you.
Okay, it was
Yeah.
interesting.
Hmm.
And I'll email Jean-Pierre and I forgot her name.
Audrey, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
for getting in contact with
Mm.
us and giving us this opportunity. I guess our
Mhm.
website does work because that's where they found us.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I'm really glad to hear about your organization too. I didn't know about this yet. So it's a pleasure to get to know you this way.
Well,
And I
but
hope
we
to hear more
we
from
do
some of
this
you. Yeah.
coffee chat every Sunday night, so you're welcome. And same thing, we take
yeah,
a break over the summer, but it's just sometimes we have special guests. Sometimes it's just to shoot the shit, and it's just a great place for people to talk and feel part of that community. And maybe if someone has a project idea, but they want to bounce some things off people, this would be a good place and get some recommendations and suggestions. So
Mhm.
take advantage of that time as well. And Rebecca, come join us anytime and bring some
Yeah.
friends. And hey, why not?
that
Yeah.
would be fun.
I do have one quick question, Linda here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As far as references, can other people give supporting letters to people that are applying?
Yes, certainly. And this is one of those communities where you could easily find someone who knows you, knows your work. Letters of recommendation are optional documents on most of our grants. There's only one place where they're required, and I think it's art scholarship. Because usually that's people who are newer, so they would have teachers who are starting to get to know them. But yeah, they're optional documents. They are super helpful. Often they are that sort of thing that gives the jury kind of like a story version or like a perspective they
Mhm.
can really connect to on who you are as an artist or what your project is. So those are super helpful to include. There's a few other things like that, like additional materials that you
Mhm.
can put in, but they're not required. But if you have them, throw them in. If you have a friend who knows your work enough, if you have someone through this group who's
Yeah.
seen your art or heard your poetry or whatever it might be, that can be someone who could write you a letter of recommendation. Yeah.
Yep. So please feel free to ask us, but don't ask us like tonight because you need it by tomorrow morning. But
Yeah.
we would be more than happy. I mean, a lot of you that do artwork, I've seen it. Muriel's seen it. We've talked about it. Please feel free to reach out and ask us. Um, because there's some amazing work out there, and if we can support you in this with a letter, we absolutely will.
For sure. For sure.
Writing letters, that's a piece of art Shelley can do. And unless there's a grant for pissing off and stirring up the crap out there, there's probably not a lot. But that one, I could win. I could get that one every year, no problem.
Yeah.
Never know.
Hey, you can do art that pisses people off very gladly.
Yeah.
We love to see it.
Cartoonists do it all the time.
This is
Mhm.
true.
Okay, so we'll let Rebecca go with a big thank you,
Yes.
and
Great way to finish National Accessibility Awareness Week. So thank you very much. And I am going to take, just so everyone knows, all the names from people that have attended any of our activities this week, including Rebecca. And I'll put it in the wheel and I'll record it and place it on the page in the morning. And somebody will also win a gift card from the coalition just for attending activities this week. So
Nice.
yeah, that will be
Thank
a
you so much
fun
for having me.
job. Okay,
anytime.
thank you everyone who attended and participated, and
Right.
we'll see you guys next week.
All right.
Thank you for doing this for everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.